What was your biggest takeaway of this trip?
My biggest takeaway on this trip is happiness has nothing to do with your economic situation. No matter where you are, you can find love and embrace your family. You have happiness. And the dollars that you make or the dollars that you don't make have nothing to do with that.
I think for me, the biggest takeaway has been the realization that I'm always scheduling things, waiting for things to happen is hard for me. So it's understanding that God wants me to wait, and He wants me to listen, and He wants me to help in any way that I can without wanting to always be scheduled. So it's a lot of humility, and to me that's very important.
My biggest takeaway of this trip was that even through daily struggles and medical hardships, the people here in Ensenada have so much trust in the Lord and such a strong faith. And from that I can see how in Orange County in our daily struggles we can always trust in the Lord and keep our faith. And there's nothing too large for the Lord to handle. My biggest takeaway from this trip is just the generosity that the people here in Ensenada have. Every home we went to, the people welcomed us with open arms and were willing to share the little that they had with every single one of us, and that just really meant a lot to me. I plan on bringing that back home to Orange County and just being extremely generous to anyone that I meet, anyone I see who's in need. And I just really admire how the people of Ensenada have such a strong community and faith in God, and that they always trust in Him.
My biggest takeaway from this trip was definitely being grateful for where we live and all I've been blessed with, and also just seeing the kindness and faithfulness of the people living here who aren't as fortunate as we are. And it just was very humbling to see that they still have all this faith, even though they've gone through really big hardships. It was just really inspirational to see.
My biggest takeaway is that generosity is not just something that's confined to rich and wealthy areas. Hospitality is something that's universal and very powerful, even in very impoverished areas.
My biggest takeaway was that you should never judge someone by how they look, because you really never know what's going on inside and what struggles they've had to deal with, no matter their situation now. And that you should always be grateful for whatever God has given you, even if it's just a little bit.
My biggest takeaway is that no matter what your situation is, or the situation of these people in Ensenada, that the amount of faith that you have and the amount of gratefulness that you have can really make miracles happen and can transform people's lives.
My biggest takeaway of this trip was not the fact that the people of Ensenada don't have much, but the way that they offer up and they're willing to share the little that they already have, and are just opening up their hearts to us every time we meet with them.
My biggest takeaway of this trip is you don't need to be able to communicate with someone, to love them and to understand what they're going through, and just even though we all speak different languages in some places, God has His own language for us, and it's all through love and peace, and it just blesses us all to be here.
I think the relationships we built with the community and the community within, like our group. I'm grateful. It was a great experience. Like, I want to come back next year. The kindness of the people, you know, even in all their circumstances, they don't seem to be bitter. They seem to just be generally happy people.
My biggest takeaway would probably be that we all have similar problems and issues that are going on in our lives and struggles. Even though we're separated by a border, God's love has no borders.
My biggest takeaway is the importance of community and of serving as a community. I think for, the group that came from Holy Trinity, they impacted me just as much as everyone here impacted me, and then just like thinking about the people here in Ensenada that are strong in their faith, I feel like a lot of that also has to do with the community that they surround themselves with, and you can see kind of God's grace in that.
My biggest takeaway from this trip is like all the people that I've met and the relationships that I've had with them, the
people that I met here in Ensenada have made such an impact on my life, and I hope I made an impact in theirs. Like the relationships that I've made with like people from our own church and from the other church is something that I'm going to remember forever.
My biggest takeaway is that the people here down in Ensenada in Mexico are the most gracious, grateful, kind people I think that I've ever met. Regardless of what they have, they're able to give us a part of themselves, and they are so grateful for whatever they can get.
My biggest takeaway from this trip is just seeing the strength that a lot of these people have, especially with their faith lives. Despite all of the hardships that have gone on through their lives, they still manage to make sure that their faith lives are important and that those are the center of their lives, and it is what is the thing that keeps them going, and that is so respectable, admirable, and so inspirational to see. And that, I would say, is my biggest takeaway from this week.
That few hands can make a big difference in a community, and that we can really come together when we need to, and more people should help if at all possible.
My biggest takeaway is that friendships and relationship building truly changes lives. It was a pleasure helping Pastor Emilio the second year in all his projects he has, helping at the hospital, helping at the jail, helping those in need in Ensenada.
My biggest takeaway is that community is what you make it. No matter your language, culture, or what you call home, we're all one family under Christ.